Two questions people frequently ask me is, what manuscripts did you use for the Apostolic Bible Polyglot? And the second is, what got you started with translating the Bible? Well, the answer to these two questions somewhat goes hand in hand. Well, I didn't sit down one day and decide to translate the Bible, but the process happened over a long period of time. In the mid-'80s, I was attending a megachurch in Southern California where the emphasis was on studying the Bible. But when discussing the Bible, some people had the King James Version, others the Revised Standard Version, others the New American Standard, and so forth. I wanted to know what God really had man to write down. So I took an interest in studying the Word in the original. I wanted to know what the Scriptures themselves said on certain words, not commentaries. So I began what I called the Word on the Word pamphlets. As I began this process, I realized that there were issues with English words, as an English word in the King James could have different Greek parent words, with each Greek word having a different meaning, and sometimes two or more different English words came from only one Greek parent word. For example, the Greek word melos, the AB Strong number 3196, has three English words used for that Greek word: a strain, a limb, and a member. Also, the English words test and tempt had the same Greek parent word. So this led me to study the Greek New Testament text for the pamphlets. But I didn't want to limit the word study to just the New Testament, so I decided to check out the Hebrew Old Testament for these pamphlets word studies. But the Hebrew alphabet was completely different, and I decided that studying both languages was too much for me at the ripe age of 45. The New Testament Greek text that I was able to acquire was the George Riker Berry New Testament Interlinear, which was actually from the earlier work of Thomas Newberry. As you can see, the interlinear edition that I had was numerically coded to the Strong's numbering system. I thought that this was a great way to study the Word, and I knew that there was a Greek Old Testament called the Septuagint. But the only Septuagint that I could find back in the 1980s was the Lancelot Brenton translation, which was a side-by-side, not an interlinear. I enjoyed the interlinear format, but with lots of searching, I couldn't find a Greek Old Testament interlinear. So I began the process of developing a Greek Old Testament interlinear myself by typing the Greek text of the Brenton edition, which was based on the Codex Vaticanus. I wanted to know if there were other Greek Old Testament texts outside of the Vaticanus, and I went to various bookstores and was told that the Brenton Vaticanus text was the only translation of the Greek Old Testament in print. So I asked, well, how about other Greek Old Testament texts not translated? No one had an answer to this, as Brenton was the only Septuagint in the bookstores. Fortunately, with a little searching, I ran across the book, An Introduction to the Old Testament in Greek by Henry Barclay Sweet, Cambridge at the University Press, 1902. From reading this fascinating book, I began learning about manuscripts and printed editions of the Greek Old Testament. I studied manuscript transmission, but decided that it was too difficult deciphering Greek handwriting, and sometimes bad handwriting at that. But in Sweet's book, he had a section on the first printed editions of the Greek Old Testament. And I found out that there were two earlier printed editions of the Greek text, the 1517 Complutensian Polyglot 6-volume set developed in Alcalá, Spain, and the Aldine edition of 1518 developed in Venice, Italy. Well, the computer was at its infancy when I began typing the Brenton text into my Sanyo twin 5 1/4 floppy disk computer without a hard drive. After moving to the state of Oregon in 1990, I took a trip to the Mount Angel Benedictine Abbey and got acquainted with the Internet and World Wide Web. Their abbey had a fantastic library with the most up-to-date computer searching ability. This was back with the 2400 baud modem and the new World Wide Web. I did searches for copies of the Complutensian Polyglot and Aldine editions, and this led me to the National Library of the Netherlands, which had a copy of the original Aldine edition. I wrote them, and they graciously microfilmed the entire text of the Aldine Bible and sent me the microfilm roll, which I took to the local college and fortunately was able to print out the whole Aldine Bible with their microfilm reader printer. By this time, I'd typed out the complete Brenton Vaticanus Greek text in ASCII, a computer keyboard layout. So I began comparing the Brenton Vaticanus text with the Aldine text and found many variants, too many to go into detail here. So what to do? A trip to Archives bookstore in Pasadena, California, led me to purchase a true treasure, the 1709 Lambert Bose Septuagint. This was a much later Greek text in the Vaticanus family, but it had a plethora of variant readings in the footnotes of the book. I could now compare the footnotes with the variants with the Brenton text and the Aldine text and decide which text I thought was the best. But as I began this comparison using the Bose Bible, I soon saw more variants which differed from the Vaticanus and the Aldine texts, mainly from the 1517 Complutensian Polyglot. So I devised a scheme that where two variants agreed against one, to generally take the majority reading. If all three differed, then I would check with the Hebrew text. Through a search on the internet, I found that the 1517 Complutensian Polyglot had a facsimile copy and that one existed at the University of Washington in Seattle. So off I went to Seattle and copied the Complutensian Polyglot, and soon afterwards found the distributor of that facsimile 6-volume set in Spain. I ordered the set, and as a result, I now had in my possession the three earliest printed Greek texts of the Old Testament. In my studying the three texts, I found that the Complutensian Polyglot had a book and chapter canon that was almost identical to our current Textus Receptus canon of 66 books, excluding the Deuterocanonicals, or Apocrypha, which I didn't consider as I wanted to complete the 66 books before tackling the Deuterocanonicals. As far as the New Testament text, I began to type out the Textus Receptus Greek text of Barry's Interlinear, which was based on Erasmus's 1518 Greek text. But I found that the 1517 Complutensian Polyglot predated Erasmus's text. So again, a decision was made to go with the majority reading of the New Testament text, greatly referring to Hodges and Farstad's The Greek New Testament According to the Majority Text by Thomas Nelson Publishers, 1982. So for over 27 years, I have been studying and developing the Apostolic Bible Polyglot Interlinear Greek, Old and New Testament. In addition, I photocopied the 1709 Lambert Bose Septuagint and added it to our A.B. Bose CD-ROM, which is available on our bookstore. So now you can see the variants yourself that I had to deal with. Well, more videos will appear on these various subjects on our Apostolic Bible video channel, and I hope that you'll check out our website, apostolicbible.com, and the Apostolic Bible Polyglot itself, and its helps. God bless.